All right, so today what I wanted to talk about, and it was actually a little bit because of the question from Kina. So I want to talk about the energetic intelligences and kind of like the seasons, but I think actually more the energetic intelligences. And really, I have the feeling that a lot of people are seeing them as something quite abstract. So when you entrain someone, it's like, oh, let's integrate bio with upper mind, but are you really experiencing these layers as something real? Because that's actually what they are. They are literally the forces of creation, and they allow a human being to develop through different stages of life. Not just human beings, animals and nature, they have these intelligences as well. The purpose of today is actually talk about it and talk about each intelligence, so bio, emotion, lower mind, upper mind, and soul. See how it expresses itself through the body, what energy does it utilize, and also what happens to a person if there's not enough of that energy. So if there's a bit more of an energy poor state in that specific intelligence. So first, like just a little bit of what is an intelligence actually. I like Lars's description where he's like, we all know about innate intelligence, right? But if you were to shine that through a prism, just like how you were to shine white light to a prism, you get all different colors, right? You get the different colors of the rainbow. And that's kind of how I see the energetic intelligences, the red, yellow, or orange, blue, all the way to purple. That's kind of bio, emotion, lower mind, and all the way through to soul. And then you have universal intelligence, which we're not going to talk about today. Let's start with bio. And bio is, if we were to look at it from a developmental perspective, it's literally from the moment of conception until you're born. That's when bio develops, and it's literally the force that creates life. So each living being on this planet has a life force, or a biointelligence. Even a plant, even the smallest, one cellular organism on this planet has a life force, because if it's not present, the person is dead. So if it's not present, you will be stillborn basically. And what the biointelligence does, its purpose is to create stability in a system. And it requires, because to be able to do that, it requires a constant sense of the environment, and it will always try and keep your system stable according to what's happening in your environment. And what it does actually in the body, so physiologically, it actually organizes your cellular function. So it's part of, or it reorganizes cellular function. It's involved in energy utilization and production. So, very important function in the mitochondria. But it also makes sure that, bones, connective tissue, ligaments, red blood cells, and all of that, well, first of all, develop, but also function as optimally as possible. Also the skin, heart, it organizes or makes sure that there's a normal heart rhythm, right? Normal respiratory rhythm. It allows a human being to have an experience of survival. And this is pre-rational. So when there's more, when you react out of an instinct and more instinctual behaviors, that's more bio. So for example, also, how whales, they direct or they know where to go by using the energy field or the electromagnetic field of the planet, right? And bees have a very similar mechanisms, doves or pigeons as well. And that would be an example of the bioenergy. So, they use the planet's, how do you say, the planet's functions, like the waters, the winds, the rhythms, the smells, the electromagnetic field to direct themselves or to reproduce or basically to create, right? And that's very much the bioenergy. So when you entrain someone, from now on, I'm gonna invite you to have this perspective when you do a bio-entrainment. So really, really imagine when you entrain someone and you make this light contact, imagine how you're impacting the cellular function. You're improving the heart rhythm, you're improving the respiratory rhythm. You're allowing this person to connect with the electromagnetic field of the world, with, with the rhythms, the water with rhythms, with the winds, the smells of the planet. So that's really how it's really, really, really powerful energetic intelligence. And sometimes we tend to disregard it because it's just bio, right? It's so much more exciting to do transform or awaken. But imagine that you're impacting all of this when you're doing a little bio entrainment. And it's literally I like to see all these intelligences literally as the building blocks of life. Some are more building blocks of an actual, physical person. Some are more building blocks of thoughts or the mind, and some are more spiritual building blocks. And this is very much building block for our physical being. Now, a little bit when there's not enough energy in bio. Phil is just coming in. All right, so when there's not enough energy in bio, the person, or maybe you will have an experience of that there's a lack of energy, or like a starvation of energy. And you also see that there's ineffective cardiac or like heart rate, ineffective respiratory rhythm. So that's also why the breath wave doesn't go all the way through, right? When there's not enough bio, the passive gets tense, and you basically get this experience of like a defensive survivor or a pre-rational defensiveness. Yeah, so that's something to keep in mind as well. When you see a person, but also when you hear their vocabulary, are they talking very much about, tired and fatigue and not even enough energy to do the daily things in life, right? That's very much, bio stuff. So let's move on to emotion. And emotion, developmentally, it evolves between when a kid is born until they start to learn the rules and start to develop a sense of self, which is usually around 4 or 5 years of age. And emotion, it really creates instability. And what emotion allows for, usually with emotion, we think about the basic things, right? Like joy, anger, frustration, all of that. But the emotional intelligence, it really allows us to actually start to build an awareness for our environment. So if you imagine a baby, right, the first thing it does when it comes out of the mom is crying. And already from that very first moment, this kid is learning how to interact with the environment, learning not on a mental level, but on a pre-rational level. So this is all still reflexes and motor skills. So when people talk about, you've heard about it before, probably like the mirror neurons, right? Where people are copying body language and copying motor skills. That's very much what the emotional intelligence does. So, a kid is learning how to, basically mimic the parents, both in emotional expression, but also in body language, body movement, to learn how it has to interact with the environment. So it's in the emotional intelligence, it's not just about actual emotions, it's also about creating an awareness or learning to create an awareness between me as a person and the environment, but also between different people. So you know how sometimes when you walk into a room and there's so much tension there, you can just palpate it, right? You know that there's just been a fight before. And that's really the emotional intelligence. So that allows you, the emotional intelligence allows you to feel that tension or that field between different people as well. So you can imagine if that doesn't appropriately develop, you're gonna have quite inappropriate emotional responses sometimes, or you won't even pick up this kind of tension. Now, to give a concrete example, and there's more and more research coming out to this, imagine what happened during COVID. So people at the daycare centers, they all had to wear a mask, right? And if this is kids in the period, you know, from like 0 to 5, where they're developing expression and emotional intelligence, they haven't learned that. A big part of their day, they haven't had the ability to use those mirror neurons to learn how to, express emotion, because it's been covered up. So it's going to be very, very interesting. Like, they're going to do longitudinal studies. There was one study actually that came out, I think it was a Danish study, that has already done some research and has found some interesting stuff, looking at kids that are growing up in that period of time, where, you know, face masks impacted that part of development. So that's going to be very very interesting. So the emotional system, because it's also a muscular system, it also regulates posture. So the big postural muscles very much impacted by the emotional intelligence, and posture in that sense, its purpose is more to allow you to express emotion as well, and allows you to express and react to the environment through body language and posture. I think that was most of it. And it also, like, it's like what we said, it allows for, you know, awareness of the environment, but with that, it also really creates a conditioned response. So, and this is still unconsciously, right? So it allows the kids to have a learned behavior, kind of, and in a certain setting or circumstance, and then the next time it will use that same reaction, because it's learned through mirroring neurons. So the kid starts to learn conditioning, basically. And a very, very important thing as well is that it links with the immune system. So another bodily function of the emotional intelligence is that it regulates the immune system. So because, again, immune system, all it does is scan the environment, see, you know, if there is both like to prepare you for like viruses and stuff that are maybe like not so healthy, but also viruses are very much needed. Like, if you don't have, you know, certain viruses and bacteria in your body that you actually need to evolve, it will make sure to update its database, to say it like that, or the viral database. So when there's not enough energy and emotion, you basically have a lack of emotional range. I mean, you all have probably seen people come to your clinic, or maybe you've experienced it yourself, that come in and there's just like no facial expression. There's no ability to even also recognize how another person is feeling. And that's very much associated with a lack of emotional intelligence, or not enough energy in that system. And they also really have difficulty in mirroring someone's state as well. So you might notice that these people have a very inappropriate response, let's say I'm feeling super, super sad. And then Elena would come in, woo, Berta, yay! Like that would basically also be an indicator that, you know, she's not able to match where I'm at, or even actually see, not even match, is more seeing where I'm at, because there's not enough energy in the emotional house. So that's also a very important little part. Sweet. So that's emotion. This, what we've talked about so far, is all pre-rational. So everything that's happening so far that we talked about is all unconscious. It functions on a level below the brain, and it's all more reflexes and, well, reflexes and just our bodily functions as well. So no conscious thought here yet. Only survival and reactor. Reactor is emotional. All right, so now let's move on to the more rational part of our system. And we can start with the lower mind. So after the kids, you know, has developed emotions and sort of like knows how to react to the environment, what it's going to do now is actually create a sense of self. So when the kid is like, you know, 5 years old and actually starts to go to school as well, they start to learn all sorts of social skills. One thing, very important thing, is that they start to learn that I am me and you are you. So they start to create a sense of identity and a sense of self, basically. And with that comes a desire to be part of a group. It comes because the group also creates safety. So the lower mind is very much also about creating stability. So the same as the bio, actually, but this time is more creating stability through beliefs, rules, stories, conditioning, concepts, thoughts, social acceptance. So it's more creating stability on a mental level. And the purpose of this stability, it's not to die, which, you know, in the bio is very much creating stability so you don't die. Here it's creating stability so you don't drop to energy poor. So the function or the goal of the lower mind is always to stay energy neutral. It doesn't want you to go to pre-rational. If you think about it in that perspective, it also makes sense why so many people excessively think, because it's too scary to experience emotion. So we just, you know, experience it through thinking or rationalize it. And that's very much when the lower mind doesn't have too much energy as well. But if it does have energy, it's actually very, very helpful for mental focus on simple tasks. And also it allows you to process information unconsciously. So the lower mind, you know, we are getting information into our brain all the freaking time. And the lower mind's purpose is really to sort and process all that information without us knowing it or even needing to do anything. So when there's not enough energy in the lower mind, that sort of goes out of the window and people start to feel overwhelmed because they can't sort this information that's coming in. And it's all just like too much and too busy and too overwhelming on a thought level. It's, if we look at it, what functions it has in the body, it's more, it regulates the emotional resources. But it also allows for automatic and learned behaviors. So lower mind is literally the autopilot of our body, and you know, it allows you to develop a sense of self. And this cycle, and it's very much located in the area of the brainstem. So like the thalamus, like the cortices is more upper mind, lower mind is more the level of the brainstem, which makes sense because that's where all automatic behavior kind of like hosts itself. And And like a little bit of a comparison as well, which I think was quite helpful, is that in lower mind, or when you're functioning only from lower minds, you always have thoughts instead of full presence. And there's more, you're living life by only rules rather than just in a state of flow. And also everything is about concepts and not so much an experience. So you might have noticed, I mean, all of you have done a transform seminar. When we hit the lower mind part of the seminar, everyone wants to know exactly how it's done. Everyone is always asking so many questions. Is it this or is it that? Are we doing the side posture with this hand or do we do it like this, right? And it's, everyone needs to know exactly in a conceptual way what's happening during that entrainment. And that's very typical because we're working with the lower mind. And that's where the beauty of integrate comes in. And we're going to talk about that later. But just, you know, for you to be aware, when you're working with that, you have the tendency to want to think in concepts rather than just allow yourself to experience and go with the flow and see what comes up as you entrain someone. But yeah, also like gonna invite you, when you entrain a person working with lower mind, really see if you can think about it, that you're actually working with automatic behaviors, you're energizing the mental focus, you're energizing, you know, you're energizing the thoughts, which allows this person to operate in a completely different way in the world, right? Imagine if all of a sudden, because this person now has an energized lower mind, rather than just thinking in concepts, it actually allows the person to experience the environment. Like, that's a huge gift that you can give to a person. So that's the lower minds. Also, some characteristics for you to imagine if a person is not so energized in lower mind. They'll find that there's a lot of mental chatter. You might find that they are a bit pushy, or like fighting for want to be right or winning the argument or fight for dominance almost. And one very important thing is also that they are almost downsizing their lives. So there's no space for creativity or novelty. And that's really when the lower mind doesn't have enough energy. So when the person doesn't experience passion, creativity, novelty, adventure, instability, that's all usually because the lower mind is hungry. And what does it do when it's hungry is bind everything by concepts and structure and rules and to create safety. And there's also this little bit sense of like hypervigilance. So it's very similar to Survivor, actually, a lot of lower mind, but now it plays out on a mental level. So in, survival, there's a hypervigilance for the environment because there's literally, a sense that you might die. Whereas in lower mind, there's a hypervigilance as well, but this is more linked to your identity and social acceptance. So there's a fear that you're not going to be accepted, or there's a fear that you might lose your status or your role or your identity. So that's more lower mind. Everybody with me so far? Because we're going at quite a pace, because I want to make sure that we cover everything. But the call is gonna be recorded, so you can always watch it back. All right, upper mind now is I shouldn't say this, but I was gonna say this is where the fun starts, but that's not true because all of them are very much fun when they're energized. But upper mind is really the first time where we start to go more towards high energy neutral, bordering towards energy rich actually. And upper mind developmentally, it develops during puberty. You probably all know this by now after the seminars, but it's really when you start to use your higher brain. So it involves bodily, it involves both cortexes, but especially there's now more communication between both sides of the brain. And also upper mind really allows for more coherency in the full nervous system. So there's more bilateral awareness, and that allows for you to hold multiple perspectives. So in lower mind, where it's very much about it's either this or that, or it's right or wrong, or cauliflower or broccoli, you know, when you ask a kid what they want for dinner, you can't ask them yet, like, what do you want for dinner? Or why is this? Like, the kid hasn't developed that yet. And that only really happens in upper mind. And it's also important that you kind of follow that as well. So in upper mind, there will be higher quality questions. People start to think more in complex models of reality, complex models of how the world functions, how culture functions. They start to see how everything intertwines and interlinks. And there's a sense of thriving for reorganizational stability. And what does this really mean? It's a bit more creating instability, where lower mind is more about creating stability, right? But in upper mind, it's really wanting to optimize to a higher level of stability. And therefore, it requires that you start to reassess your beliefs, reassess the models that you've been running your life by. And very much also, it allows for facilitating teamwork and collaboration and increasing coherency. Where, in lower minds, usually you're so bound by the ego and, like your identity. In upper minds, it's more, how can we use everyone's skills so we create an outcome or reach a goal as efficiently and effectively as possible. That's very different energy to it. You see that? So upper mind is also more about, so optimizing, achieving, and it kind of like starts to defy the status quo as well, because there's more complex thinking involved. And one other, there's more conscious choice for interpreting the environment. So we're in reactor, right? Or in emotion, you're interpreting the environment as well, but through the emotional lens. So everything is more about reacting, mimicking someone's behaviors and actions and body language and emotions, but on a pre-rational level. Now it's more actually being consciously aware of your environment and responding in a way that's most appropriate and energy efficient. You see that difference between the two? And this is very much also then based, you're responding based on what your map of the world is and your map of reality. And you start to sometimes, if it's very energized and you start to go more towards soul as well, that's when you start to realize also, oh, maybe my map isn't working so well. How can I reorganize my map of the world to respond more appropriately, basically? Now, if the upper mind isn't very energized, life becomes one model. Or basically one reality, basically. And this part, I think, is very interesting because it's a bit sneaky. But when there's not enough energy in upper mind, there's literally almost this like mania to want to understand everything. So there's literally a huge desire for enlightenment of the mind, and that's above anything else. And that could even be above other people. So you value the mind more to other people, which can lead to exclusionary exclusionary thinking. And the other side of the spectrum is that a person actually has challenges with understanding stuff. So if the upper mind isn't very energized, the person, will literally have a lot of trouble with asking questions like, why do things happen? How can we optimize? Stuff like that. They just don't understand it, or they have the desire to hyper understand it, right? And the character that comes to it is the optimizer. So lower mind very much is the thinker. The upper mind is the optimizer, and both of them are rational energy or energetic intelligences. All right, then now we're gonna go into post-rational for the first time, and this is also more where we for the first time really go into more of an energy rich or sometimes even super rich state. And this is where you have soul, but also universal intelligence. Universal, we're not going to talk about today, because that's not as much expressed in the body. That's more the field. But soul is very much expressed within the body, well, within. Soul is actually more, it allows us to also connect more with the field. And it's the first time where our mind, our spine, and our heart actually start to oscillate all together in a very coherent way. So these three, they're oscillating together, and it allows you to experience a larger experience of yourself, but also how you connect with the field around you. So it's much more the experience of oneness. So, before it's usually more sense of separation, and we're all individuals, or we're alone if it's more in, survivor. Soul is very much literally experiencing how the field connects all human beings, connects us with the planet, connects us with nature. Oh, you have to go, Malin. See you later. Thank you for joining. So it's more of a transpersonal and energetic experience, and the gift of it is more of you have a knowing. So there's more of a sense of knowing what's true, knowing what's real, but not from a mental part, but more from an energetic experience. And with that, it's also you're more out of the culture, because you're beyond the culture, beyond the mind. But when it's very much energized, you're really able to use this knowing to inspire leadership and action as well. So that's when, it's actually like soul. Quite often we see it as like, it's love and gratitude and kumbaya and blah, blah, blah. But soul is actually a highly unstable, very, very, very large energy source. And when it's used appropriately, it can literally, it inspires leadership, it inspires action, and it inspires, speaking truth, and also love, gratitude, and those more qualities, also community and stuff like that. And one very important thing, it's very much about giving and sharing your personal gift. So it's about knowing your gifts and sharing them with the world, and quite often also even inspiring others to know who they are and remember their gifts as well, or incarnation. And this was post-rational. So again, like when you entrain someone, and you do an upper mind entrainment, or you do a bio entrainment, really see if you can focus on what you're actually influencing. So with an upper mind entrainment, you're literally impacting someone's models and maps of the world, and this entrainment is gonna allow them to question those models, see if they're still appropriate, or if they maybe need to reorganize to a different model of the world. And it allows, for more coherency in the system. Same for soul. Maybe, if soul is not very much energized, they don't know what their gift is. And if you do a soul entrainment with someone, maybe all of a sudden they remember their home. They remember their gifts and how to even share it with the world. It inspires leadership, right? So when you're in training, please pay attention to that. And also when you're doing integrate, let's say you do bio integrated with soul, right? So you're literally working with someone's physical structure, their like cellular functioning, their heart rate, their respiratory rhythm, right? And imagine what happens if you were to infuse that with, a sense of truth and a sense of like giving and sharing someone's gifts. And what would that do to the survivor, right? If they were more coming from a light of truth perspective, that's a completely different experience. Yeah. All right, my Zoom got out. Apologies. But yeah, so when doing entrainment, when using integrate, like see if you can broaden your mind rather than only thinking about the abstract, energy layer that you're entraining. Like really see if you can focus on what are you actually impacting in someone's body, thinking, mind, nervous system, their interaction with the world, right? Because these are literally, forces of creation that reorganize life, reorganize human beings, and it's literally, it allows for evolution. So what happens if you entrain someone literally thinking that you're impacting evolution? That's quite something different. That's it for the intelligences. Do you have anything to share? Any questions about what we discussed? Any thoughts, inspiration, aha moments?
Maybe I have a question. Mm-hmm. It's a bit maybe practical in this sense, but I find it a bit harder to find in the body where from lower mind and up, like emotional lower mind and upper mind are confusing when I touch a back and I try to understand which one is which.
Right. That's a very good question. So bio, you know how to palpate for, right? That's very much your rigidity in the passive system, in the spine and connective tissue tension. Emotion, if there's tension or a lack of energy in the emotional system, you feel very much a ropiness in the muscular system. And how I usually palpate this is first the big postural muscles, use only one hand, the big postural muscles by the spine, and also the anterior muscles here. And are they, nice and soft, which would be an energized emotional layer, or are they very, very ropey? And you can just feel that, like literally imagine that this person is, like not responding appropriately with the environment, doesn't know how to mirror emotions. So what's gonna happen? It builds up all this emotional energy in their body, creating tension. So maybe that helps if you think about it that way. So if you palpate, where are you feeling this emotional bound up in the motor system, in the muscular system? Because that's what really happens. If emotion is not as expressed, it doesn't allow, it gets blocked in the motor system. So you don't get the expression through body language or, large muscle movements. So that's how you feel for the emotional system. Now we go to the heel tension and the eversion stress at the ankles. And that's where you feel the lower mind and upper mind. So if you think about that, the lower mind and the upper mind, they're very much more literally creating the nervous system, right? And the cortex. So if there's a lot of tension in the lower mind, it will create a global tension, or the adverse mechanical cord tension, right, in the nervous system. And that's why when you feel for the heel tension, it will be very tense there. Now you can have bound up tension, so it's a lot of potential energy there, and this is the same for any system. Or there can be a complete depletion of energy, which is more when there's so little energy there, there's just nothing. So when you palpate for the heel tension, sometimes it feels so rigid you can hardly move the heel, and that would be there's no energy at all in lower mind. Now sometimes it's very easy to move through. It's oh, this is nice, it's neutral, there's there's energy there, but it's not exceptional. And sometimes when you feel there's tension there, but it's really bouncy, so it's almost a little bit like a spring. If you were to take the heel down, it almost springs back up again. And that would be a way to feel there's a lot of potential energy. So then you could probably, for example, you could use that as an integrate. And this is more, you feel it more at the back of the ankle as well. So you feel it more here. Same, but both for a heel tension and eversion, you feel it very much here. For the upper mind, you feel it more here. So, imagine if you were to tape your foot when you have an ankle injury and you tape it like this. That's more how you feel the upper mind. Yeah, it's a bit more here. So when I palpate, it's a bit hard. I always check the heel tension with my fingers like this. So one below the heel, my thumb is on the Achilles, and 2 fingers here. So I can feel the upper mind with these 2 fingers. And that's how I feel how rigid the front of the foot is. And for upper mind, it's the same thing. Does it feel like you can't move the ankle at all? And this would be more the whole ankle, right? Also the talus. Or is there, it just feels nice, easy, or is there a lot of tension in there? Sorry, potential tension. And then sole, you can feel around the heart. So it's literally this U shape behind the heart and the lungs, kind of. And when you go over that, it's you just move your hand like this, and it's wow, when you touch it, you just feel a sense of expansion, and I just want to hang out here all day, basically. And that's more the soul.
One more thing, just to really write it down properly, eversion is still heel tension. So eversion in itself is still lower mind.
Yeah, if it's more at the back.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Nice. Anything else, Phil? Do you have any questions? I don't know if you're in the clinic or if you're at work or something. If you're even able to talk, I don't know. If not, then we're gonna round it up. And then I'm curious. I'd love some feedback on these kind of Zooms, because this is also fairly new for me. This is, I think, the 3rd time. And also, if you have any ideas for, or you want the topic to be covered, just write it in the group. You can use the group anyways also for, asking any questions. There's a lot of people in there now, so we can help out. And I just spoke to Lars. He was working before I came in, and he's oh, I would love to be a guest speaker on the next call or call after. So I'll write it in the group as well. But when Lars is on there, if you have any topics that you really would like to be covered by Lars, just post it in the group. And then we can use that opportunity with the master being here also. So yeah, sweet. All righto. Then thank you for joining.
Thank you for organizing it.
No worries. Happy to support you in your journey. I know how like fucking complicated and hard network is, especially if you're not really, have a lot of people around that can help you or support you, or you have to practice with, or even just to, talk things through. It's really, really, really hard. So that's really what, I want to create with these talks and the WhatsApp group as well, just to have a bit more of a community to ask questions and inspire each other.
That's beautiful, energizing.
Yeah, it's definitely. All right. Have a great weekend, and see you at the next one. Will be in 2 weeks' time.
Okay.
Sweet.
Okay. See you in 2 weeks' time.
See you later. Bye-bye.
See you. Bye.
Yeah.